Hello and welcome to this week's hot topic. You can see here, we're going to talk about a toxic workplace this week. And the reason we're going to do this is because it has such importance on your own mental health and well-being and within the organisation that you're working for it to thrive. So first of all, what do I mean by a toxic environment? Because again, we buzz these words around all the time. So when we work within a toxic environment, we're looking at an environment where you start to feel drained, where you start to feel devalued, where you start to question your very being and existence. And when we go to work, we want to strive and thrive to be the best person we are, because none of us wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to go to work today to do a bad job. I think we're all there on the line going, I want to work well, I want to work hard, and I want to be recognized for what I do. But here's some things that might be some red flags to determine whether or not you're in a toxic workplace. So the first thing is there's always drama or there's always gossip going on, and you're either center of that, or people are coming to you, or you hear it all the time. And that's generally a real key sign that you're in a toxic environment. Because actually, if we're in an open and honest workplace, we won't need to be gossiping about people. And ultimately, I always think with gossip, if somebody's happy to run somebody else out to you, they're probably running you out as well. So actually, nobody wants to work in that environment where they feel that they're constantly threatened around what they're saying and how they're feeling or what's going on. So if there's constant drama, if there's constant gossip, then be mindful that that's your first red flag for a toxic environment. Second of all, poor communication is generally a key sign. And with poor communication, we're talking about things such as, you're the last one to find something out, or you're told third hand or fourth hand by something. There's a great theory called Shannon and Weaver here, and Shannon and Weaver has a theory about the sender and receiver. It's all to do with decoding. And I've been guilty in the past of trying to communicate a message to people and ultimately getting it really wrong, because in my head as the sender, I think I've been very clear and concise, but the receivers have heard it in a very different way. So it's really important in leadership or in management that as a sender of information, we've got it right. We understand the audience and we understand that people are receiving that information. And when we think about our methodology of communicating, so if we're communicating via text or WhatsApp groups or emails, there is always going to be room for misinterpretation. So be mindful of that. But poor communication sometimes can be a deliberate thing, and it can create this toxicity because, again, we can set people up to fail quite quickly with poor communication. It's a great tool for blame because, again, we can say, but this is what I said, this is what I meant. And again, it can foster dark toxicity really quickly. So if you're working for an organisation and you've got news bulletins, you've got daily updates, you've got clear handovers, then that's a great sign and a great environment to be in. Another one is the staff turnover rate. So if you're going to work for a company and they've always got a job ad out, we've got to ask ourselves why. What's going on in that environment? Is it because it's not a nice environment? Is it because of the leadership? Is it because of the workload? And again, we'll cover some of this in a second. But a high staff turnover is a red flag that something's not right. Ultimately, the HR processes, the human resource processes, should be clear enough and robust enough to track applications as they're coming in and doing exit interviews as they leave. And when people leave an organisation, it's fundamentally important to get that exit interview to find out why they're leaving. Because ultimately, honest feedback is how you're going to strive to improve your services. So again, high turnover is a great sign for a toxic workplace. Another sign for a toxic workplace is lack of recognition or rewards. Now, reward and recognitions is a basic principle, and there's been so much research over this through the years. And I remember going back years ago when I started care, I was on £2.90 an hour. I'm not saying how long ago that was. But I did it because I had a fantastic work environment. I had a great matron, I had lovely staff, and I loved my residents. So therefore, it was a joy to go and work, regardless on the rate of pay. And I was always thanked at the end of a shift. I always had my supervision. I always had my appraisal. So the basic principles around leadership and making sure this reward and recognition piece is there. We used to celebrate birthdays. You know, granted, it was a name on a board, but you were recognized. You were felt as if you were a number. And there's great apps out there nowadays where you can do reward and recognitions for your staff or as a member of staff. So that might be certificates, it might be achievements, it might be employee of the month, or whatever it is. But recognizing that. So does your place of work have a mechanism for you to have feedback, and are you allowed to use that feedback in a constructive manner? So recognizing reward and recognitions is also a part of the Investors in People framework, so IIP. So does your organization, or is your organization, Investors in People accredited? And it's a great framework because it looks at really basic things such as, you know, do your staff have good welfare facilities? Have you got fresh fruit? And it sounds a bit strange, but a study was done, and just giving staff some fruit actually did improve the performance. Fresh water, you know, just the basic principles about recognizing how hard work is and just trying to have little things here to help. And it might be just amongst the staff that they can arrange stuff. So thinking about how you can recognize and reward is really important. And it's the little things. It's not about giving everyone a pay rise. It's just the little things. It definitely, manners and being courteous goes a long way with staff. And the one tip that I was given years ago is your building could be burning down, but just make sure you pay your staff properly and they'll be on your side. You mess staff's pay up, guaranteed you're going to get backlash. So just be mindful of that. Unmanageable workloads. Now, I appreciate in health and social care and in nursing care, this one's really difficult because ultimately we've always got people going sick. But then we have to ask ourselves, why? Who's managing that sickness? What's going on? Why do we have high sick levels? Because it has such a knock-on effect for everyone else. So unrealistic workloads. Have you done a time management study? Do you know how long things should take to achieve? You know, I did a recent time management study in my place of work. And it was a very simple task. You know, every person needed this report done, but that report took 1 hour. And if you had 50 people to do it on, well, that was over a week's work just doing this one task, which seemed a very simple thing to do, but was so time consuming. So ultimately, as we bring processes into the organization, have we done a proper time management study on those processes? Are we draining an already fatigued workforce? So managing those workloads is really important, making sure that we've got the right resources, the right people, and the right skills. Equally unhealthy competition. So comparing people to another, saying, oh, but your other colleague does it like this, or making people feel less valued is definitely a sign of toxicity within the workplace. Clear bullying and harassment, you know, there is a difference between having a laugh and a joke and trying to have a jolly workforce versus experience and witnessing bullying and harassment. So we know we've got our protected characteristics, and ultimately we need to make sure that that's protected, and fundamentally we don't hear it. And again, I go back to if a member of staff says to you, oh, I'm not racist, but we all know what that means. I'm not homophobic, but, or I've got a joke and actually that joke is just inappropriate. We all have a duty to stand up and say, hang on a minute, because if we accept it, if we hear it and we take that in, what's to say that they're not doing that about us as well? So making sure that bullying and harassment has no place within a workplace, because again, it's a very clear red flag for a toxic environment. Equally, a no work-life balance. So what we mean by this is it's Friday night and by Monday you've got to have everything done. So clearly meaning you're going to be working over the weekend, or you're expected to work out of your hours, or you're expected to do all of this stuff to get those tasks done. And that no work-life balance burns you out quicker than anything, because it causes mental stress, it causes that anguish, it causes a problem amongst your social life, and then obviously across your family. So making sure that you have a good work-life balance is really important. And then finally, the last red flag here is lack of leadership and support. So are you being governed from the front? Can you see who your leadership team is and are? Are there clear directions? Can you clearly see what's going on? And do you have an inspiring person at the front waving that flag and being a role model for your organization? So we'll just recap those 9 flags for a toxic workplace. So the first one is around the gossiping and the drama. If you see it, flag it. Poor communication, always being the last one to find out something, or it's just always coming at you in one kind of message. High staff turnover, so not really doing that analysis to find out why that's going on. Lack of recognition and rewards, those unmanageable workloads, unhealthy competitions, bullying and harassment, no work-life balance, and then that lack of leadership and support. So let's say we're in a situation, we've started a new job, or maybe we're a manager, we've gone in and we thought, oh, this doesn't look right, or this isn't good. What can I do about it? So the first thing is to call it out. You know, in health and social care, we have our 6 C's, and one of our 6 C's is courage. And it is difficult to speak out. I appreciate that. I've been there many a times throughout my careers. But ultimately, it does take courage to do it. And that may just be during a supervision, or maybe a one-to-one, or talking to somebody else to say, look, this is how I'm feeling about certain situations. Because again, you're entitled to your feelings or your opinion on a situation. Equally, start to document everything. Make sure you've got clear records about what's said or what you've seen, which is kind of triggering to why you think that there is a toxic relationship there. For yourself, make sure you're seeking support, because there's nothing worse when you feel that drowning feeling, because it starts to really pull you down. It'll affect your mental health really quickly. It affects your ability to think. And I have seen really good people over the years sink because of this. So just be mindful of that. Establish really clear boundaries. And this one it's a great sign of a toxic workplace when you try to challenge somebody. You say, but what's my roles and responsibilities? And then they can't give it to you, or it's not clear. And that's because you're either overperforming or you're in a role that you're set up to fail anyway. But really establishing those boundaries, you know, what am I actually responsible for? Why am I doing this role? Who am I meant to be feeding into? And is my role even achievable within the time frame that you've given me? Again, this one really pains me a bit, but it may be the case that it's time for you to move on. You know, start looking for a new job. Look after yourself and your mental health, because I guarantee you this, nobody else will be looking after you. So make sure you look after yourself. Make sure that your own health and well-being is a priority. And again, prioritize your health and well-being. So if you do feel that you've got that sinking feeling, you're unhappy in your place of work, make sure that you're taking time out, do some meditation, have a look at some of my videos on my mental health channel. Lots of things about managing those levels of anxiety and stress. You can always educate yourself. You can look at your staff handbook. You can review your policies and procedures. And you can look at the way of addressing these through your grievance procedures. And finally, you might want to escalate the issues. So if your management's not listening, maybe you've got an area manager that you can go to, or if not, it might be the case of then going to the regulators. What I would say about this is most companies in their staff handbook have a very clear process that you have to go to before a third party or a regulator will listen to you. They normally go, have you followed your internal policies? And that's because every company has the right to amend what's going on before it goes to a regulator or a third party. So do make sure that you have read your staff handbook and that you have followed your internal processes before that happens. So what is the actual cost of a toxic work environment? Well, the cost is ridiculous. So if we look at for employees first, clearly it's going to have health issues. People are going to feel stressed. They're not going to be performing properly. They're going to have spiraling or ruminating thoughts. It's going to cause low moods. It's going to cause burnout. It's going to cause cardiovascular problems because of the high blood pressure and the stress. So just from that point, anything we can do to ease that is an absolute way to go. You're going to have a complete decrease in job satisfaction. So the moment you've got that decrease in job satisfaction, your productivity is going to start to go down. So there's no winning here at all. It impacts on your personal life. It impacts on your ability to think clearly. Again, managing your relationships and family, and it spills over into everything. So it's really important that as an employee, you recognize signs of a toxic work environment. And finally, your career development. You know, if you don't feel there's any personal growth here, you're going to lack that vision and lack that drive to give the organization your best. So from an employee point, you've got your sickness, you've got your burnout, you've got your decrease in productivity, decrease in job satisfaction, and obviously that inability to see a way forward. So ultimately that member of staff will just leave. For the employer, clearly staff turnover. I mean, there was a recent study done, can't remember when, but that I read, and it was in along the lines of something between £6,000 and £8,000 to recruit a new care member of staff. So just recruit, train up, and induction. It's probably more than that now. So just think about that money you are pouring down the drain with this massive piece of retention where you've just got this wheel going around. Again, decrease in productivity. So you've got this high turnover, you haven't got this continuity of care. If you think about Tuckman's theory of storming, norming, performing and adjourning, you're never going to get there because you haven't got the continuity of your team coming together to work through that storming stage to get to where they need to be. You're going to have your reputation of your organization is going to be damaged. People are going to start to say, look, don't go there. It's not a great place. And ultimately what you're left with is quite low skilled work. Lots of people that really shouldn't be there. You're surviving. You're trying to do the best you can to keep your business open. And ultimately you're just going to have increased safeguards. You're going to have increased whistleblowings, all of things like that, all avoidable. Equally, you can end up with legal and financial consequences. So, you know, if there's bullying and harassment going on and you haven't spotted it, this is going to be a real problem for you. Equally, you've got your absence and sickness levels. So again, looking at the cost of there. So it may be the fact that you're having to use agency work. It could be all of that stuff. And finally, that you're going to have that really low employee morale. So again, we know that we have this transference and counter-transference. So if I'm in a bad mood, I can pass that on. Well, in health and social care, if we're passing that on to our patients, we're going to then have an increase of challenging and aggressive behaviour or challenging behaviour that could be hazardous at work, all avoidable because of the morale of the staff at work. So again, thinking about how we can turn that around using those reward and recognitions and that role modelling that we talked about earlier from the Investors in People to really pick things up to try and improve that productivity there. And then for society, obviously, the more times people are off sick, the longer, you know, they're going to be on benefits, or there's going to be this impact to the economy, or it's going to be constant use and drain of the healthcare system. So we don't want that. And equally, the social impact on families, so the relationship problems that this has, is just fundamentally this massive ripple effect. So what we need to do as an organisation or as an employee is work together to identify whether or not we've got any signs of a toxic working relationship or toxic working environment. And if we do, we need to address it. And the best way to do that is send out staff surveys, send out employee, stakeholder surveys, have a look at the data, get that data back, and then analyse it. From that analysing, then write a quality improvement plan. So look at the areas and see what you can do, because I guarantee you this, the little changes will go a long way. During COVID, my prior organisation, we gave out COVID badges, so calling them heroes with COVID on. And that meant so much to our staff, because even though they felt let down by the government, they felt recognised and seen by us. So each person had a certificate to say that they worked through COVID, that they were valued, and obviously they did a sterling job. And we gave them a little medal badge just to recognise the commitment that we had through that challenging time. And that meant, look, we had lots of tears and lots of laughter when we did our little ceremony and we gave them out to everybody. But it's those little things that goes a long way in maintaining relationships. So we're all responsible for making sure we don't work in a toxic environment. There are lots of things that we can do about it. And if we look at the positives from a positive working or positive environment and a positive work environment, it's a win-win-win, isn't it? But what we need to do is we need to be open, we need to be honest, and we need to be transparent. So being open is, I'm open to hearing things. I'm not going to criticize. I'm not going to defend things. The first thing we do as managers is jump in and go, no, that's not right. But actually, if we listen to what people tell us, we're going to go a long way with that. So that's being open. Being transparent is then saying, but you said we did. So you said we weren't being very clear in our communication. What we've done is this to address it. We want people to see that they're being heard and that they're being valued. Or if somebody's left the organisation because of gossip, because of a toxic relationship, we can say, look, in an exit interview, in a recent exit interview, you said we did. We were told that there was gossiping going on. What we've done is we've tightened up our policies around this. We've reviewed this, and this is what we're going to do because of it. So that's transparency. So openness is providing the framework. Transparency is informing people what we're doing. So that's open, honest, and transparent. And obviously honest is just doing what you say you're going to do, right? It's not a difficult one. So I hope you found that really useful. I hope that gives you some ideas. I hope I haven't raised too many red flags for people, but if I have, then use it as an opportunity to reflect. And remember, in health and social care and in leadership, we're all about reflective practice. So if you have recognised anything about being in a toxic environment, sit back, reflect. It's not about blame. It's about a culture of quality improvement and a culture of change. I wish you all the best of luck. If you need any further information, please don't hesitate. Just stick it in the post. Take care. Or when I mean post, the comments down below. Take care. Bye for now.